sweeties, how are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. So today we'll be talking something very important, and it's about a video a Mexican man actually made asking why is it that USA is obsessed with race. So a lot of people did not find that video funny because he actually went further to say, I mean, like when there are crimes, there are always like this is black and black crime or African American and all that. So he was like, why is it not like all of them are all Americans? Why is it not like, I mean, it's American crime and all that? And it's to him, he was like, it is just American on American crime. Why is it that they always have to differentiate if it's a black person or African American or something that did it, or Asian American that did the crime, that it is all American? And he was like trying to tell us that in Mexico that it is less, like, that their own crime, like, their own crime or racism is not like as much as it is in America. And you all already know that how America was founded, and it is even harder for people not to be stuck on that race because of its foundation and how they created this white, black, and brown in order to differentiate class and all that. You know what? Let's get into it.
Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in, I live in Mexico and I'm from Mexico. It's so crazy to me how obsessed with race the US is. Like every time I watch US news media, they always talk about black on black crime, white on black crime, black on white crime, etc. But to me, it's just American on American crime. Like you guys are all Americans. And it's even crazier that when I see how the US tries to like subcategorize people, oh, African American, Mexican American, Chinese American, Asian American, XYZ. But like, aren't all of you guys American? Like, what do you guys call white people? Like, aren't they like European American? But like, you guys are just obsessed with like subcategorizing and race. Like here in Mexico, like if someone commits a crime, if a Mexican commits a crime against another Mexican, it's just a crime. Like we don't got no blanco on moreno crime, no moreno on blanco crime, mestizo on mestizo crime. We're just Mexican on Mexican crime. Like we're all just Mexican. We're not obsessed with race like that. Like what the heck would I be in this case? Would I be a Hispanic, white, Latino? Like what even is that? Like here in Mexico, I'm just Mexicano, soy Mexicano y punto. Like I'm just Mexican and that's it. There's black people here in Mexico and they're just Mexicans. They're just Mexican. There's lighter people and they're just Mexican. Like it's not a whole race thing down here. But anyways, guys, it's just something that I wanted to see your guys' perspective on. Let me know what you guys think. Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in, I live in Mexico and I'm from Mexico.
When we first came to America, my parents told me to stay away from black people. One of my country's biggest things is that we often bleach our skin, but that's definitely not about race. I was the darkest sister in the family, even though I have the same, skin complexion as this, and my parents treated me badly for that. My country has a caste system. My country has a whole thing where we do blackface. But don't worry, that's not about race at all. That's a whole different tradition. When you come to my country, I'm going to think you're either Michael Jordan or Beyonce and take pictures with you like this is a zoo. But also have music genres that directly take like every single thing from, no. Also, the telenovelas are going to be very homogenous. Also, that doesn't matter if you're indigenous or black, because we just see each other as, okay. It's very disingenuous to act like every other country doesn't care about race when plenty of people have gone to, let's say, Italy and talked about how racist it was there. And I also think this video is disingenuous because it's always geared, or the language is always skewed in a way that is about black people, but they try to say it's not about black people because nobody says white on white crime. Everybody always talks about black on black crime, so you kind of did that there. Which is, I guess, a myth. It makes sense because of proximity and all of that, so I see where you're going with that. Recently I traveled to Aruba, which is a beautiful island. I loved it. I really would like to go back. And we went to a little town called San Nicolas, whose nickname is Chocolate City. And Chocolate City was named after, you guessed it, all of the black people that were there in the town. Like, it's a nickname that people call it, not because of their being fellow Arubian, or is it Aruban? It's because they're black. And I don't think it's named as offensive. It's not my place to find that offensive for them. But that's not the US. It was just the whole thing on TikTok like a couple months ago, fighting for this Tyler, the South African artist, not to be called black, which is just fine if that's what you want. But is that not about like her ethnicity and race being discussed? Like, I think America is more progressive than a lot of other countries like to say that they are. And that's like, if America is here, they're like, it's not by that far. Ignoring it and pretending that it doesn't exist just to like one up Americans and say, oh, well, you guys are always so obsessed with this, when in reality the experiences that you guys relate to us ends up being racism. You're like, oh no, you guys always want to make it like that. Like, no, your parents told you when you came to America to stay away from the African Americans, whether you were, I guess that's not about race.
Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in, I live in Mexico.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why we're obsessed with race. Because unlike in Mexico, where everyone, regardless of color, is labeled under one nationality, it's not like that here in America. One of those reasons why is because we don't have one general common language like you guys do in Mexico. You guys all speak Spanish. In America, we speak multiple languages. We're a fucking melting pot. Number two, this country was literally founded on racism, as this country, colonizers from Euro-America, came in and pillaged and raped and colonized the lands, because this land used to be Native American land, and white people came in and colonized the United States of America and took it away from the natives, and that was white people. Number two, slavery. Black people were uninvited. We were uninvited. We wanted nothing to do with this country, and we were involuntarily put here for no reason to be slaves. And the slavery was specifically targeted toward black people by racist white people. We wanted nothing to do with this country. So that's number two. And number three, the reason why is simply because this country has not really right its original sin. And its original sin was slavery. And that's why race is an obsession in this country. Until this country rights its sin of slavery and pays back what's owed to black people and other groups that have been pillaged and marginalized in this country will never stop being obsessed with race. So as an outsider looking in, if I were you, I would read some of the history books. Nothing against you, nothing against this creator, nothing against you. But that's the quickest way for me to explain why there's an obsession with race in America, unlike other countries.
Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in, I live in Mexico and I'm from Mexico.
Racism and colorism is highly prevalent within Mexico. What are you talking about? Racism and colorism is very prevalent within South America. But seeing as you identify as mestizos, maybe you're identifying more with your European Spanish ancestors. Before it was your beautiful ancestors of Spain, we had the people of Islam committing their North African Islamic conquest. But here's the proof, because y'all never believe us. Mestizos is a person of mixed European and indigenous non-European ancestry in the former Spanish Empire. 47% of most Mexicans are predominantly European. 25% are mestizos, which share a mixture of indigenous and European. 21.5% are indigenous.
crime against another Mexican, it's just a crime. Like, we don't got no blanco and moreno crime, no moreno on.
Some of y'all Mexicans be the most delusional people I ever met. Like, y'all can't sit here and talk crap about the U.S. being obsessed with race, when in Mexico, y'all constantly use terms like blanca, negra, negro, morena, moreno, indio, prieta, prieto, all these terms to describe someone's skin tone and race. And some of them are derogatory as well. Like, are we gonna forget northern Mexicans always shaming Huaqueños all the damn time? Saying Pichahuacans because of its indigenous population? Are we gonna forget the racism and discrimination that indigenous people face in Mexico constantly by Mexicanos? Like, y'all gotta be this delusional thinking that it doesn't exist when y'all just as guilty being obsessed with race.
Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in, I live in Mexico and I'm from Mexico.
And this is exactly why y'all need to start looking at mestizos and white mestizos as the white people that they are. They are the white people of Latin America. They are the dominant group of Latin America. This is the dominant classes trying to speak over and for the racialized classes of Latin America. They are akin to Anglos in the US, white people, who will say similar. Oh, there's not a big deal with race here. Of course not. You're not being racialized. You're part of the dominant group. Just like white people don't discover that they're white until they're in their 30s. Black people know they're black at what, age 4? And you ask that of a black person in Panama, Cuba, Colombia, it's gonna be similar. You ask that of a white mestizo in Colombia, Cuba, Panama, they're gonna say the same similar things as he is saying, as white Anglos do in the States. Dominant groups are not being racialized. Dominant groups should not speak for racialized people. And I've said this before again and again and again. I contend with race more in Latin America than I ever do in the US. And this is not to give the US an escape hatch or say it's less. None of that. I am offering my experiences. Racial othering is common, normalized in Latin America, so much so that you have goof troops like the guy saying things like this. It is normalized. Latin America nationalizes its racism. It turns its racism into national symbols. I have 1 trillion videos and reels and other content speaking to this. This is my entire body of work. And this is the gaslighting that continues to happen because, again, people who wouldn't be racialized in their country are being the mouthpieces about race in their country. How? Why? Stop listening to them. They're lying. Their experience is not universal, and their experience is not what it would be for someone who was being racialized. Because you cannot truly think that someone that looks like him and someone that looks like me are having the same experience. Let's turn this on for once. Let's think for once. Try it. And this is also very important because this is the narrative that gets sold over and over and over when you have generations of Black and Indigenous people speaking up, pushing back, resisting, and talking about this all the time. All the time. But you never listen to us. You never do. My pinned reel on my TikTok is an Afro-Cuban saying to stop calling his Afro-Cuban music Latin, because he don't even know what Latin means. All he knows is that he's Black. All he knows is that his music is coming from Africa. It's an African-derived art form. And here you are saying, no, that doesn't exist.
Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in, I live in Mexico and I'm from Mexico. It's so crazy to me how obsessed with race the U.S. is. Like, every time I watch U.S. news media, they always talk about black on black crime, white on black crime, black on white crime, etc. But to me, it's just American on American crime. You guys are all Americans.
I just need everybody to understand everything about America dates back to racism. I don't know if y'all noticed, but segregation was a thing like 100 years ago, less than 100 years ago. And slavery was still a thing less than 200 years ago. We're not that far removed from it. As we all know, if we paid attention in history class, majority of the population that's in America right now isn't native to this land. Some people stole it, and some people stole people and brought them over here. Let's say like a Chinese family or a Mexican family. been living in America for like 3 generations. You think they're gonna say they're American? You think you're gonna look at them and be like, oh, that's just an American person? No. They're a Chinese person that happens to live in America. As a Mexican person that happens to live or be from America. Nobody is native to this land except for the natives. That's like when us American black folks try to like explain to like Haitians and Jamaicans and African people like, yeah, we all black, but we say black. They say other things. We just saying we all black to let y'all know we all look alike. We are all the same, just a different damn dialect. And the slave ship just stopped in a different spot. That's it.
Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in.
Okay, let's honestly talk about it. Is Mexico like literally the land of like people being blind to race, of like equality and stuff like that? Vanderbilt University says no. I think this was published in 2017, so it wasn't too long ago. But it literally says right here that white Mexicans tended to do 10 years of schooling versus 6.5 years of schooling for POC Mexicans, which is a 45% gap. And it says here that on average, they used to make $193, but white Mexicans used to get $220 a month, while POC Mexicans got $137, which is a 41.5 gap. And here too, apparently white Mexicans, like 2.5% of them had running water, while upwards of 11% of dark-skinned citizens said they lacked basic necessities. And then 7.5% of white Mexicans had bathrooms, while 20% didn't. Like, Mexico has just normalized, like, issues. It's not that you guys are race blind.
Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in, I live in Mexico and I'm from Mexico.
If I had to say one specific brand of TikToker that I absolutely cannot stand, is the Latino Hispanic TikToker that loves to make such a huge spectacle about how much they love their people, their heritage, how much they're such a voice for the voiceless in their communities. But in actuality, they just say shit like this. Because what do you mean Mexico is not obsessed with race? It's like, how do you think Mexico came to be? Like, I know there's a lot of, very dumb stuff that's passed around like gospel in the communities, very harmful rhetoric that likes to pretend everyone is Aztec, that there's only mestizos, and I don't know, so much other shit that people like to say.
Americans are obsessed with race. As an outsider looking in, I live in Mexico and I'm from Mexico.
So, as an indigenous person, I do not agree with this creator's take at all. It lacks so much context and nuance, and it is honestly very telling of his privilege as a mestizo man living in northern Mexico. Like, for him to say that there is no racism in Mexico is completely wrong and ahistorical. And yes, race is perceived differently in Mexico when compared to the United States, because Mexico for the longest or historically has promoted mestizaje, where essentially, the Spanish or mestizos intermingle with indigenous people in order to improve the race. Or to create a superior cosmic race, which that in itself is rooted in anti-indigeneity and anti-blackness. Because in order to improve the indigenous race, you need to have some white blood in you, or you can't have any African ancestry because you'd be considered tainted. And it wasn't until 2016 that the Mexican government finally recognized Afro-Mexicans on their census. And when they finally, included them, they realized that there's over 1 million Afro-Mexicans living in Mexico. And when it comes to their immigration efforts, they have historically targeted Afro-Mexicans and indigenous Mexicans under the premise of them being undocumented Haitians, Cubans, Guatemalans, solely because they don't look like what a mestizo should look like, or what a Mexican should look like, or sound like a Mexican should sound like. And if you were to go to southern Mexico specifically, like Oaxaca, Chiapas, Guerrero, where there is a significant Afro-Mexican indigenous population in Guerrero and Oaxaca, you would see the structural inequities that those communities experience at the hands of the Mexican government and mestizos. There was also literally a news report a few years ago of an indigenous woman having to have her childbirth in front of a hospital lawn because she was denied access to care. And Mexicans love to say that there is no such thing as racism in Mexico, only classism. That is complete BS. Because the same way that Black and Latino folks in the United States are historically disenfranchised when it comes to, specifically economic opportunities, it's because of racism, right? And that same thing is reflected in Mexico. Who tends to be poorer in Mexico? Indigenous people, Afro-Mexicans. Why racism? So if you ask a non-mestizo person, specifically indigenous person, an Afro-Mexican, they will tell you there is racism in Mexico. It's not just colorism, it is not just classism, it is explicit racism. And for folks who don't live in Mexico or have Mexican ancestry, please take his comments with a grain of salt and do some further investigation on your end. Just because his comment, even though it's his opinion, is very dismissive of the realities that Indigenous and Afro-Mexicans experience at the hands of the Mexican government.
So
and
this is all I
mestizos.
got from the stitches, and coming from people that are very, very racist, even not only to themselves but to other people too, is something that I am trying so hard to ignore and all that. And then let's start from what he said. He said that America is very obsessed with the race. They are very obsessed with the race. And then when you look at everything that how United States or how America started, you will know that there is no how race will not be involved and all that. Considering the dark history of USA, it's very obvious that everyone is still to this very moment very stuck on race, right? And then he said that when it comes to their own this thing, it's a Mexican, not like black on black crime or maybe like Asian American. I know that all of them are all American, but the foundation of America was started on, right? And when you also go to Mexico, you are also going to see their own racism. Not just going there, even the ones that are in America, right? The ones that already mix up with people that look like me. I see a lot of them, and I bring a lot of this thing here also being racist to people that look like me. So it's not like I am trying to make them trying to accuse them. I have been doing this for a while, and I have seen how everybody treats my own people, right? And Mexico has their own racism, classism, sexism. How do they treat the original people of Mexico? How do they treat them? In Mexico, the light, or should I say the white Mexicans, earn better than the dark or people that are not as light as those ones. They earn and they live better than other people. Is that not racism already? It's just really amazing how people sit over the fence and point fingers. One thing is that when you are pointing fingers, other fingers are pointing at you. He probably has already reasoned it US is obsessed with race, Mexico is not obsessed with race and all that, but they have their own racist that is following them. So you can imagine people that treat, you all are from the same place, right? You all are all Mexican. But because some people are lighter than the others, you live better life than the ones that are dark. Is that not witchcraft, And who actually invented the term white? Who invented it? Was it black people that invented it? No. It was the people that want to tell us that there is difference between a black person and a white person and an Asian person, right? It was not us. It was not people that look like me that started it. People that wanted to be on top, at the top forever, started it. So, and I just don't know, but like, it's always amazing how people like, jump into a discussion without even checking his own people or what is going on in his own territory or in his own community and all that. And I saw somebody actually in the comment section saying that who said that Mexicans are not racism? That he has an aunt that always call Asians like he talks about Asians in Mexico and call them plague you like they are plague like they are good for nothing on earth. So you can imagine somebody saying something like this to another people, and somebody is out here trying to tell me that racism, like when you come to their own distance, there is nothing like that. But it is happening, and it is you people that always like always starts it because people are just gonna be minding their business. Somebody will come out from nowhere to jump into one discussion that he knows nothing about, you know? So yeah, that is all I got to say. I see a lot of them, a lot of Mexican jumping on black people, saying that black people are noisemakers, saying that in their culture, they are not used to raising voices, saying that it is not in their culture to speak up. It is in black people's culture to speak, to be noisemakers, to be town criers. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.